find Steve.
There he is.
All right, and it's 6 o'clock. There we go. All right, bear with me as I read this script for the remotely conducted open meetings. Good evening. This open meeting of the Nantucket Public School Committee is being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of March 12, 2020, due to the current state of emergency in Commonwealth due to the outbreak of COVID-19 virus. In order to mitigate the transmission of the COVID-19 virus, we have been advised and directed by the Commonwealth to suspend public gatherings, and as such, the governor's order suspends the requirement of the open meeting law to have all meetings in a publicly accessible physical location. Further, all members of public bodies are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. The order, which you can find posted with agenda materials for this meeting, allows public bodies to meet entirely remotely so long as reasonable public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with deliberations of the meeting. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. This meeting will feature public comment. For this meeting, the Nantucket Public School Committee is convening by video conference via Zoom app as posted on the town's website, identifying how the public may join. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and that all attendees are participating by video conference. Accordingly, please be aware that other folks may be able to see you and to take care not to screen share your computer. Anything that you broadcast may be captured by the recording. All supporting materials that have been provided to members of this body are available on the town's website unless noted otherwise. The public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda unless I, Chair Jen Iller, notes otherwise. We are now turning to the first item on the agenda. Before we do so, permit me to cover some ground rules for effective and clear conduct of our business and to ensure accurate meeting minutes. I, Chair Jen Iller, will introduce each speaker on the agenda. After they conclude their remarks, the chair will go down the line of members, inviting each by name to provide any comment, questions, or motions. Please hold until your name is called. Further, please remember to mute your phone or computer when you are not speaking. Please remember to speak clearly and in a way that helps generate accurate minutes. For any response, please wait until the chair yields the floor to you and state your name before speaking. If members wish to engage in a conversation with other members, please do so through the chair, taking care to identify yourself. For public comment, staff will activate the chat feature on YouTube. Members of the public who have comments or questions can use this feature to communicate with the public body. Instructions are on the town's website. The chair and/or staff will do their best to address the questions and comments. Finally, each vote taken in this meeting will be conducted by roll call. As a preliminary matter, this is Jen Iller, Chair of the Nantucket Public School Committee. Permit me to confirm that all members and persons anticipated on the agenda are present and can hear me. Members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Tim Lepre, Vice Chair. When I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Tim Lepre, Vice Chair.
Yes.
Pauline Proch. Pauline Proch.
Aye.
Steve Sordovic.
Affirmative.
And Zona Butler.
Yes.
Thank you. All right, staff, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Michael Kozort, Superintendent.
Present.
Dr. Beth Hallett, Deputy Superintendent.
Present.
Jen Erickson, Director of Technology.
Present.
And Logan O'Connor, School Committee Clerk.
Present.
Anticipated speakers on the agenda, please respond in the affirmative. Dr. John Bucky, NHS Principal.
Present.
Martin Angelo, Director of Finance.
Present.
And Diane O'Neill, Director of Facilities.
Present.
Thank you, everyone. I'd like to call to order our meeting tonight for Tuesday, May 5th, 2020. May I have an approval of tonight's agenda?
Move to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Any comments from
Aye.
the public? We're going to wait a few minutes to see if we have any public comments or questions. Thanks for your patience while we wait. We'll just wait another minute or two. Nothing is coming in yet. Okay, well, seeing as there are no comments or questions coming in, we'll move on to presentations and discussions of interest to the committee. We have our NEASC update with Dr. John Bucky.
Thank you. I know everyone received a copy of the PowerPoint presentation. I would just like to do a little history lesson before we begin on NEASC and the process over time. The last decennial visit we had was in 2005, and that was under the old accreditation process that had 7 standards for accreditation as opposed to the 5 you see in the presentation that we'll go over tonight. In each of the 7 standards in 2005, we received more recommendations than we did commendations. In total, there were 36 recommendations and 52, or 36 commendations and 52 recommendation. During that time, in the old process, they were required to do a 2-year progress report. After 2 years, the school had only addressed 10 of those 52 recommendations. NEASC asked them to then do a special progress report on 13 what they called highlighted recommendations that they felt needed more immediate attention. We reported out, that would have been my first year in 08-09, that we had addressed all of those recommendations. So for the pre-self-study in 2010, they just asked us to focus on 3 remaining recommendations from the 52 original. As you know, in 2013, we backed away from the NEASC accreditation process. We joined a number of schools across New England that determined that the process at that time was too time, labor, and financially burdensome to schools. In 2017, we rejoined the accreditation process after NEASC had revised their standards and the process. And part of the new process is the collaborative conference, which is what I'm reporting out on this evening. So as you saw, we received 30 commendations and 6 recommendations. So I just like to quickly go through those. You have the PowerPoint in front of you. They tell me that the PowerPoint is visible. We didn't do a dry run, so I don't know if you're looking at it in hard copy or it will be on the screen. But it starts with the 5 standards. And I believe that our NEASC accreditation co-chairs had come and done a presentation to the committee about the accreditation process. So I don't want to be too laborsome on that reporting out. Standard 1, the commendations, and Standard 1 is our learning culture. And, you know, they celebrated the fact that we have a safe, positive, respectful, and inclusive culture. Student and teacher relationships, which in remote learning are serving us very, very well. The vision of a graduate work that we've done, the collective responsibility taken by staff, and the strong sense of social awareness. So those were the commendations that they provided for Standard 1. In Standard 2, which is the student learning standard, they commended the school for the one-to-one initiative, our classroom environments, posting objectives and agendas, which isn't universally celebrated, but I was pleased that NEASC included that as a commendation for us. Our use of formative assessments, the development of rubrics to go along with our vision of the graduate, evidence of higher order thinking in classes, integration of technology, the elimination of midterms and finals as to increase instructional time was something that the vision team celebrated as a commendation under student learning. And then the authentic learning opportunities that they observed. In Standard 3, which is the professional practices standard, kind of the administration of the school. They commended us for our school improvement plan, the extended workday that we have every Wednesday, the open enrollment policy that allows students to enroll in honors and AP courses without any barriers, the efforts in departments to look at data to inform instruction, and the productive student-family relationships that we have. In Standard 4, which is learning support, the variety of intervention strategies we have, the student support team, the small guidance to student ratio that we have, effective health services, renovations to the library were a big hit, and the school counseling services that meet the needs of our students. And finally, Standard 5, which is the learning resources. They commended us for the time and financial resources that are committed by the town to support the schools, school programs, the dependable funding, the short-term and long-term plans to address capital and maintenance, and the infrastructure protocols that we have in place. And so that's a lot. Diane O'Neill certainly supported us during the collaborative conference in outlining some of our facilities work. Then we get to the recommendations, and it's interesting to go back and read the decennial visit from 2005 in some of the things that they cited, and then some of the things that have emerged as excuse me, new needs for the school. The first recommendation is a curriculum recommendation, which I don't think surprised anyone. Several of the recommendations really kind of tie in to one another, but the curriculum piece is over the last, in the time that I've been here, we've had an assistant superintendent, we've had a data coach, we've had a K-12 curriculum director, we've had curriculum directors for humanities and STEM, we've had a deputy superintendent, and now looking for the 2 curriculum coordinators. And all of those make sense because they serve the needs at the given time. But as the collaborative conference people, the feedback was there needs to be kind of a consistent way to approach curriculum to ensure that it is in a consistent format across the district, 6 to 12 or K to 12. The second recommendation they had, again, develop collaborative structures and processes to support coordination and implementation of the curriculum. The next one, or the next 2, I would say, kind of feed in to one another. And it's a bit stinging in their perception or their takeaway given our department head structure. And it says, examine the role of department leaders in the building, determine how they will support the work of curriculum, instruction, and assessment moving forward. and whether those people currently in the role have the capacity to do that work. And I just want to give you a little insight into that recommendation. In an early interview during the collaborative conference, someone made the comment when they were asking about distributed leadership in the building and how departments foster growth of department members and how they facilitate the curriculum. And a comment was made that our department heads are more glorified secretaries. And so I think that teed up the collaborative conference members that when they did meet with our department heads, they ask some very pointed questions about curriculum work, about who takes responsibility for instructional practices and assessment. And from their feedback, much of what they heard was, well, that's John and Jen's job. Well, John and Jen are responsible for that. Well, John and Jen do that. And so I think this recommendation is, how do people become department heads? And there are a variety of ways that that happens here. Some departments rotate it and a person picks up the role. Other departments, no one else wants it, so someone will step forward. Other departments, it's a rite of passage for seniority. I might suggest that neither of the three of those are necessarily the best way to get a leader in the department. And so as we look next year at having a new superintendent, a new high school principal, some new curriculum coordinators, perhaps some new faces in special education in terms of team chairs, this is a really good time to examine the department leader structure and perhaps to have a more selective process that people get some leadership training or some coaching training and really assume more of a role, and maybe that expands it out 6-12. There are lots of different models, but I think it's a timely recommendation for us. The next one is ensure that instructional practices are designed to meet the learning needs. And although they cited that as a commendation, is the personalization that we do, I think during classroom visits, the team members saw a lot of teachers in front of classrooms lecturing and students sitting as passive learners. Now, that is not a universal statement. They certainly saw students doing hands-on things, but enough so that they have listed it as a recommendation. The next two should come as no surprise to school committee, are infrastructure needs, develop and implement a plan to address the issue of laboratory space. If you think back to 2005, most of our graduating classes were 80, 85 students, and we didn't have a 3-year science requirement. Fast forward to today, we have a 3-year lab science requirement and classes of 125 and 140. So the fact that we need more lab space is pretty clear. And then develop and implement a plan to address issues with classroom space in the building in light of projected enrollment numbers. And, you know, if we were to get some space at Cyrus Pierce, that would be wonderful. Real estate is real estate. But in terms of addressing these recommendations, that would require some renovation work in terms of getting some science labs up to speed. I just want to commend the faculty and staff for the fact that we have 30 recommendations and 30 commendations and only 6 recommendations. That is really a testament to their hard work and the work that they did in preparing for that collaborative conference. And that's the NEASC report.
Great. Thank you very much, John. All right, any questions or comments? I'm going to go to Tim. I don't see you on my, oh, Tim, there you are. Any questions or comments for Dr. Bucky?
Yeah. John, I have a question. I am concerned that department heads could become a sinecure rather than something people could aspire to?
Yeah, I think that we have been talking about the role of department leaders for a number of the years that I have been here. And in a small system, it's difficult to utilize a structure or a format that a larger district would use in terms of maybe having them teach one or two fewer classes. But we know it's difficult to bring someone to the island for a full-time teaching position. So if a department head were to teach 3 of 5 classes, where would the other 2 classes come from? So I think it's an exploration and figuring out what model would serve us better than the current model, and at the same time recognize that some departments only have 2 members. The art department has 2 teachers. The music department has 2 teachers. Vocational ed, they are a department, but in diversely different specializations. So one is doing automotive, one is doing culinary, one is doing woodworking, landscaping, nursing, criminal justice. It would be difficult in that circumstance to have a content expert leading the department.
Okay.
Great, thank you. Zona, any questions or comments?
I just want to say congratulations to the high school. Having 30 commendations on only 6 recommendations is quite the accomplishment. But Tim asked the question that I would have asked as well. So again, thank you, John.
Thank you, Pauline.
I just want to also recognize the efforts of Dr. Bucky, because yes, it is your staff as well, but it's your leadership. And as you noted when you first came here, and I remember when we had that report back in 2007. So we've come a long, long way. And thank you for your leadership to get us to this point.
Thank you, Steve.
Just an outstanding job, John. Outstanding. The years that you have put in, your leadership, obviously your staff has responded, and I'll say again, outstanding. But I have to ask, what does sinecure mean?
I believe that would be a question for Dr. Lepre, because I too wondered what it meant.
Tim, it's all you.
It is sort of a position that you're granted for life.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, John. And thank you for your team and all their hard work getting us this far. It's incredible. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to move on to our audit report. Martin?
Good evening. The audit report. Hi. The audit report this year is this is the 3rd consecutive year that we've had a clean audit on the end of year report. So we have no findings. There is nothing major to report as a deficiency, and that's what this is a personal goal of mine, and obviously a district goal as well, for us to have clean audit. And this year we were fortunate. It's the 3rd consecutive year. So if you have any questions, I can answer. There were some changes I just wanted to mention in the end of year report in the way certain expenses are reported this year, such as technology breakdown. But we worked with Jen, and it was a smooth report. So
thank you very much. Any questions or comments, Tim? Tim, thank you very much. Questions or comments? Okay. Pauline? Tim?
Yes, I mean, go ahead. I was just going to say thank you, Martin, for that. It's always good news to have a clear financial report. Although in the last or second from last paragraph, it says that they did not perform an audit, that this is the required financial review. Are we required to every so many years have a full audit, or what would necessitate that?
It's always the same. It's always a review, but it is in fact a audit. It does become an audit because we are our expenses are different buckets. So we report on the end of year report all the expenditures that the school has for the year, including some that you don't usually see on my quarterly reports, such as retirement obligations and medical insurance. All the revolving accounts, state and federal grants are included. So we do call it an audit. It's always been an end of year report, but I don't know. I don't know where the major difference would be, but it is a detailed report which examines our end of year report and all supporting documentation, including whether we have followed up on all the requirements and are in compliance on expanding state and federal funding, like I mentioned, and all the other funds that the district controls. So,
thank you. Zona, any questions or comments?
My question, I guess, is to Mike, that, the way that letter was worded, it's like they were only asked to do a specific thing, but had they been asked to do other things, they may have, come up with something. So, and I think it's how you read that sentence. Do we or do we not have an actual audit? I know the collaborative that I'm a part of does have a detailed audit done. So that would be my question.
Michael Kozort, through the chair.
Yes.
I believe that question has to be asked of Roselli, Clark and Associates to determine if there is a higher level that should be done. I think in answer to your question, every so many years, 5 years. So I would hesitate to answer that, but I will ask that.
Okay, thank you. Martin, I don't think I ever, sorry, I'll give you a chance to say what you have to say. I thank you for adjusting that summary report. It makes it so much easier to read. It's pretty and colorful. So thank you for your efforts on that.
Thank you. No, the ones that we have every 3 years is the student activity accounts. That is a deep audit. This is the extent that the Department of Education requires Massachusetts auditing companies or companies that do audits in Massachusetts to do the end of year reports. It's always, in my 5 years since I've been here, it's always been that they examine every supporting documentation that we have to justify expenditures and revenues that are reported to the state. And this is required by, like I mentioned before, by the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. So the scope is, I think, your question, Zona. The scope of the audit and what it entails and what they are asked to examine. This is set up by the Department of Education. But I can provide an official answer to the question. I'll check with the auditors.
Thank you, Steve.
That would be great. Sorry.
It's quite all right. I'm confused. That one-page document from that company is in essence approval of our financial practices. Is that the idea? I swear I read it twice and I didn't think it said anything.
To answer your question, Steve, it's always good when it doesn't say anything. That's what we look for in an audit. If there were any deficiencies or they found any mistakes or misstatements, there would have been findings. And those findings are listed separately along with recommended course of action. And we are required as a district to set up a plan of how we're going to address these deficiencies. So the fact that it's just a letter, these are just standard letters that they send to everybody and has no findings is a positive news for Nantucket.
Yes. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That's what I wanted to know, Martin.
Yeah. Thank you, Martin.
Should I move straight to the next presentation?
Don't mind. Head on to the third quarter budget update.
Third quarter budget update is challenging and different. So, as you will see, Nantucket Public Schools from the charts and from the summary of that Jen is just sharing on the screen, you will see that in the third quarter, we were $374,652 below last year's level of expenditures, that is total expenditures, mostly due to a reduction in outstanding purchase orders and encumbrances, which is a little over $330,000 reduction there, as well as the fact that payroll hasn't been up to the level that it would have been had we been at full employment. What I mean by that is we've had some vacancies that have remained unfilled. Some positions were filled later in the school year, so that has generated some savings there, as well as no expenses after March 13th for any kind of substitute teachers, and that we expect to see obviously into the fourth quarter as well. And the other part of it is, as I reported before, this is an odd year. Every 7 years or so, it falls that we have to split payroll in 27 periods as opposed to 26 because of timing differences. Otherwise, we're not allowed to prepay for services. And with the late Labor Day this year, that would have happened. Now, with respect to the situation with the coronavirus closure of schools, we're closely monitoring every outstanding purchase order currently we have and every expense, and we are looking to see where we can generate some savings if possible. As you will see in the next two sections, for the community school and school lunch, those would be a focus for us for the remaining of the year. So I don't know whether you want to ask me any questions about the school part, or do you want me to move to the community school?
Can you give your final report and then we can do questions after?
Okay.
That's okay.
Yeah, absolutely. The community school, as you will see, the revenues show a decline of $9,354, which in actuality is $59,354 because we have this year a $50,000 increase general fund appropriation. It's very challenging situation. We are working very close with the director of the community school, Tracy Roberts, and her staff, with Superintendent Michael Kozurt and Deputy Superintendent Beth Hallett. We've been constantly in touch and talking about what these programs will look like at the end of the year. I will refrain from sharing firm numbers. What we forecast will be the shortfall. We do anticipate and we expect to have a shortfall in the community school. And it's unfortunate. It is very unfortunate because hard work went into the community school the past 2.5 years, 3 years. They had great 2 years in fiscal year 18 and 19. And this is coming at a bad time. I mean, they were trending so well the first 2 quarters. Revenues were showing again increase year over year for the third consecutive year. So again, this is, I keep repeating the word unfortunate, but it's with everything obviously that's related to this current situation, epidemic situation. Expenses are also trending close to $40,000 less in this fiscal year as compared to last year. That's to be anticipated as well. I want to underscore that it's not payroll savings that we have in this. These are mostly reductions in purchase commitments and actual expenses that are incurred on the operating side of the budget. So again, the Nantucket Public Schools system, in all our conversations, we remain committed to the community school to finish the year, and if nothing else, at least make it whole, to break even for this current fiscal year, and then see how fiscal year 21 turns out. The school lunch program, same thing. it was trending very well, as you will see, as of March 13th, which was the last day of actual in-school service for the school lunch program. They were trending close to the budgeted subsidy, which is a little over $55,000. They were at $52,337, which was a slight increase over last year. But we were projecting to finish within the budgeted subsidy for a third consecutive year with the school lunch program. So fortunately for the school lunch program, Island Kitchen has provided an immense help, and Linda Peterson has been tremendous. I mean, they've continued to serve in the high school parking lot, and they are there between 11:30 and 1:30 every day, serving breakfasts and lunch. And for the month of March, for the period March 16th till March 31st, they managed to serve 678 lunches and 682 breakfasts. For the month of April, which we just got the final numbers, a total amount of 4,552 meals have been served. And those meals, just to let you know, will be reimbursed to us at the free rate for the lunches and the breakfasts. They're separate buckets, obviously, at the corresponding free rate reimbursement, which is the highest one possible with the state and federal agencies. It is a unfortunate situation that, but I have to comment again, Linda Peterson's work, to thank Island Kitchen, to use this opportunity, and also Erin Long, the district manager. Chartwell's has done a good job supporting her as well. So free and reduced, I know, Tim, you would ask about that. It's pretty close to last year, 41% as opposed to 38%. We keep hovering around the 40% percentile for free and reduced, and there are questions whether we should apply to consider certain schools within the district to be completely free. But we worked with Erin Long, the numbers, and they would not work financially for us. The only school that is very close consistently to 40% is the elementary school. And even that, the way it works with the state is they reimburse at the free rate. They take the percentage and multiply it by a factor of 1.6, meaning 64% of all the meals served in a school will be at the free rate reimbursed, and the other will be at the reduced. Again, it is we keep track on this. We've communicated with Sarah Erickson, Linda Peterson, Chartwell's as well. Erin Long, the district manager for Chartwell's, shared her information about other schools in Massachusetts that have gone that way, and she said that financially a lot of districts are staying away from applying for this until the whole district obviously becomes eligible to be a free and reduced district. You see all the numbers in the school under the school lunch program report. Days of operation, it makes sense. We were closed for the second part of March, so they're less than the previous year, and that's why we have less sales in cafeterias. So I'll take any questions at this time.
Thank you very much, Martin. And I really, as far as the school lunch program is continuing, I have to say an extra special thanks to Linda Peterson and Island Kitchen, Patrick Ridge. Also, a note from Logan, she made mention that the truck is going to be moving to the back of the school starting on Friday, May 8th. So if everybody doesn't see it in the front of the school, don't panic. They're moving to the back of the school starting on Friday. Thank you. Anyone have questions or comments? Tim, questions or comments for Martin? Tim, questions or comments?
No questions.
Thank you. Pauline?
Yeah, thank you, Martin, for a great presentation. I'd like us to maybe think about being creative and trying to get some of that deficit down on the school lunch program. I don't know what the usual protocol is if we send out letters to parents who have accounts in arrears, but before we do that, keeping in mind that many of our families are currently out of work, I'd like to explore some other options that there might be through the community or other available funds that we could maybe reduce this number so that we didn't have to reach out to families at this time.
Thank you. I mean, we do communicate, and Logan and Linda Peterson communicate on a regular basis about outstanding balances. We didn't have much before the closure. Linda and Logan have done a great job keeping us up to date and also communicating with parents and families. So I don't believe, I believe our surpluses are over our deficits at this particular time. And we've received several generous donations that we have that can offset and help some families that might be in need in this difficult times.
And almost every meeting we've been approving and accepting donations for the Adopt a Lunch program, which is, according to Logan, covering almost $20,000, which is tremendous. So I feel like we're in really good shape when it comes to our lunch program right now, comparatively considered, you know, what we've dealt with in the past. Steve?
I'm trying to turn on my microphone. I refuse to ask questions when Martin is doing such a great job under such difficult circumstances. I thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Zona? Any questions or comments, Zona?
My only comment is I agree with what Pauline said, and I agree with Jen that the Adopt a Lunch program has to have helped us quite a bit. And it is difficult times, you know. So that's something maybe we could discuss at one of our executive sessions. That's it. Yeah.
Mike?
Madam Chair, Mike Cosworth, Superintendent of Schools. I just want to clarify for the school committee that the subsidy that we agree to pay each year, which is about $55,000, is a very common thing for school districts to do. It's very hard to run a food service program in the black. And I know that many of you have heard this, but there may be some community members who have not. 10 years ago, the deficit was running closer to $185,000. And so we had to make up the difference between any subsidy that we had budgeted and whatever it came in at. The other factor is that the bad debts that we had at that time 10 years ago was $77,000. That is now under $5,000. At least it was before we went to remote learning in March. And then, so that's amazing that it is down that far. And the last point that I would want to make is that there are no limits on who comes for breakfast or lunch to the lunch truck. That is not simply free and reduced, although we can count them under the free and reduced reimbursements. But we have tried to spread the word and use this opportunity. You do not need to have qualified for free or reduced lunch to partake in the program that we are providing every morning through our food service and island kitchen. So if anybody can, any student can participate in that, whether they are so qualified or not. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. I think that's an important message right now as people are struggling and trying to get back to work and trying to find ways to provide for their families. So I think that's really important to let the community know that they don't have to have qualified or participated in the program, the free and reduced program, to be able to get food during these difficult times. So thank you. Thank you, Martin, for your presentation.
Thank you.
Moving on to facilities update, we have Diane O'Neill.
I'm probably to just go through this school by school and mention one or two things or three things for each school that we've done. I really don't think that you want me to go through this point. by point. So I'll start off with the elementary school. Elementary school, some of the larger projects we did this year, we replaced the outside lights. It was a national grid project. They're all LED lights. It came with a reimbursement. It was a great project. We added 3 lights on the back of the school, which was really a safety concern for staff when they were going back to their cars after dark. I just think that was a great project. We replaced some of the kitchen cabinets in some of the rooms. That was a capital project. We had asked for capital funding to do that. We took 5 of the classrooms that Tim Gubish had chosen to start off with. We replaced the kitchen cabinets and the countertop. Great project, really looks nice. We had the gym floor refinish in that building. We removed carpet in 5 of the rooms and replaced it with vinyl floor planking. Again, it's just a huge improvement from what those rooms look like. We also took the floor mats out, the cocoa mats, from all of the entrances. There were, I believe, 6, including the areas in the kindergarten entrance and the area in the cafeteria, and we replaced those. That looks phenomenal. We've done some minor painting in that room. A lot of HVAC work. I think we've done a lot in the elementary school this year. The intermediate school, we're still dealing with leaks here and there. I think we have a handle on it now. The builder has been great. He just came back about a month and a half ago. Again, we went over the leaks again. We went over some window issues. Hopefully we're on the road to completely fixing that. A lot of HVAC issues in that building. The energy recovery wheel system, one of them had to be completely rebuilt. We dealt with that. Everything's up and running now. We're really happy. It's a great building. Middle school, we took 4 rooms and we removed the carpeting. Under the carpeting is the VCP tile, which was the original. Well, not original, but when the building was upgraded. So most of that work was done in-house. So we took the carpeting out. Our staff buffed the floors and sealed them again. They look amazing. One of the rooms had to have tile put into it. That's why there's a price next to that line item. The dance studio, we've done some work this year. There was some ceiling work that had to be done. Some of the floor had to be done. We are looking to possibly redo that floor at some point. And then I just want to mention the window screens and the shades in that entire building, the window screens, most of them were made by the wood shop and Demo, who's our building supervisor in that building. Mike Irvin had his kids making shades. It was a great project for us. It took a really long time to get them all done and all of the shades replaced, but it really makes a difference. The high school, we've really done a lot of work. First of all, we replaced the risers last year for graduation. I think that was a great improvement. The vocational wing, we had the floor in the bathrooms epoxied, and we are going to be doing the landscaping room hopefully this summer. We replaced the lockers and painted the hallways on the upper and lower level. And I just got the bids in just the other day for the main level. Hopefully that will be completed in the next couple of months. So all 3 of the academic wing floors will be completely painted, lockers replaced, and they have a nice countertop, similar to what the middle school looks like. The pool pack, we did a lot of work on the pool pack. It's an HVAC unit. In the pool locker rooms, our staff actually repainted those this summer. The high school vestibule, huge safety improvement, that was put in last year. And we also, last summer, we renovated the front office of the high school, replaced the carpeting, had it all painted. I think it looks great in there. The energy recovery wheels in the high school, which sort of sit up above the pool, I don't believe they've worked in quite some time. Had them completely rebuilt. They are running. It is a huge improvement for our energy costs and air quality. We're going to replace 2 roofs pretty soon. I just opened the bid for that. And we will be replacing the boilers this summer. I had a walkthrough today with contractors for the boiler. The bid is going to be open on May 14th, so I don't have dollar amounts for you. The central offices and grounds and athletics, I kind of group all of that together. Bacchus Lane, we've done phase 1 and phase 2 to get prepared to put the baseball field over there. As you know, we have a brand new playground with a basketball court, which is great. We also finished the Bacchus Lane storage building, which sits behind the skate park. I think that's a great improvement. There are a ton of uses for that building, and we also just finished the security on that building. So there's cameras over there, and it has the same security system that all of our schools have. Central office roof was replaced, and handheld radios, another safety improvement. We replaced all of our handheld radios this year. So throughout our entire campus, we have, they're actually police grade radios, and it was a great safety improvement for all of us, staff and students. We're working on some other things. We're working on a security system upgrade for software. And I think that's all I have. Softball, we resaw it every year. And then I have some future things.
Thank you, Diane. Questions, Tim? Comments?
Questions?
Thank you, Diane. Pauline?
Yes, thank you, Jen. You know, every time, Diane, you do your report, I'm in awe of you and your team, because it's just, the list is exhaustive. And I just look at it and think, how do you ever sleep? Because it's just, there's such a long list. Or when do you ever sleep? Not how, but when. Let me ask a question. Have you found any barriers in the recent limits that we have with the construction, or do you anticipate having any of your deadlines halted in the current climate that we're in?
I actually moved every bid that I'm opening this week and next week. We're supposed to be open in April. So we're, I don't want to say behind, because we're really not. The academic wing and boiler room roofs, I would have loved to have started them by now. Hopefully construction will open up a little bit and we'll be able to start them at the end of May, and that's fine. It's going to take about 2 to 3 weeks to get them completed. I'm not worried about that. The boilers themselves, there's quite a long lead time for those boilers. So we asked permission, Mr. Kozort asked permission to do the contractor walkthrough today, and that was extremely helpful, and that will keep me on track for the May 14th bid opening. Just because of the lead time for that, and it's going to take a while to obviously get rid of the old boilers and get the new ones in and get them up and running. So I want to say yes and no to that question. Yes, we pushed back some bids, but I think we'll be fine.
Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Any questions or comments?
I do have a couple of questions. We've heard a number of times how critical it is to replace the high school and CPS boiler. Is that in the current budget or the 21 budget?
It's a capital appropriation. It's a capital request. And I'm sure that you're aware the town has sort of tabled our capital right now, but they've come up with a way to fund that project because it is a critical project. Mr. Cosworth has been working very closely with Brian Turbot on that. Mike, do you want to speak to that?
Through the chair, Diane's right. Brian and I are talking about capital projects, and the town recognizes that that is one capital project that must go forward. So I am very confident that either through free cash or through perhaps the bond that was taken out for the building of the new school and renovation of the of the middle school, that it could fit under that if necessary.
I'm glad to hear it. And the roofs that you're talking about, Diane, are those this year's? Are those also capital improvements? And are they this year or next year?
They are from this year's funding.
And are they critical enough that we need to be working with the town to make sure we get them done?
No, we have the funding available for those right now. That's fine.
Thank you. Good. Thank you.
Thank you. Donna, any questions or comments?
Not at this time.
Thank you. Diane, I'm just wondering if you can speak to the green communities and where we are at with that, and can we use any grant money? Are we getting any grant money? Can we use that for upcoming projects like boiler replacement?
So Margaret Song and I worked together for a grant application for the boilers, but I believe everything is on hold with the state right now because of the closures.
Okay.
I haven't heard anything, but it was submitted on time through the green community.
And was that to help with the cost of the boilers? Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, moving on to committee discussions and votes to be taken by roll call. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. May I have a roll call vote to approve the donation from Cape and Islands Workforce Development Board to NHS School to Career Program in the amount of $2,500? Tim Lepre? $500. Tim?
Move approval.
Second. Zona Butler.
Pauline?
Aye.
Steve?
Aye.
Jen, aye. May I have a roll call vote to approve the donation for Adopt a Lunch Trade Program from David Lovett and Meg Ruley in the amount of $500 and Hal Landy in the amount of $100?
Move to approve.
Program from David Lovett and Meg Ruley in the amount of $500.
Second by Zona Butler.
$100. Roll call vote. Okay. Pauline from David Lovett.
Aye.
Jen, aye.
Aye.
Steve, thank you. I'm getting a lot of feedback right now. I don't know if everybody is. It's very confusing to me.
Indeed, it is.
May I have a roll call vote to approve the April 7th, 2020 meeting minutes? Tim? May I have a roll call vote to approve the April 7th, 2020 meeting minutes? Tim?
Aye.
Zona?
Aye.
Pauline?
Aye.
Steve?
Aye.
Jen, aye. May I have a roll call vote to approve transfers and invoices? Doesn't look like there are any transfers. Tim? Jen, aye. May I have a roll call vote to approve transfers and invoices? Doesn't look like there are any transfers. Tim?
Aye.
Zona?
Aye.
Pauline?
Aye.
Steve?
Aye.
Jen, aye. Moving on to the superintendent's report, thankfully, because I'm tired of hearing my voice.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Michael Cosworth, Superintendent of Schools. The first thing that I wanted to do is certainly acknowledge that this is Teacher Appreciation Week, and I know that the chair is going to read a comment at the end of the meeting, so I won't dwell on that. But in this environment, as difficult as it has been for parents and students in our community, it is just as difficult for our educators. And they have been amazing, simply amazing. And I thank you from the bottom of my heart, as does the entire community. I also would like to acknowledge an announcement that was in the paper recently, but we haven't officially introduced Michael Horton as the new principal of the Cyrus Pierce Middle School. And I know that Michael is in the meeting, has zoomed in to our meeting. And we are delighted that we have him to take the reins. He knows our students, he knows their families, he knows the staff, and he knows the curriculum. And we are very fortunate to have somebody of that caliber step into that position. So congratulations, Michael Horton.
Thank you.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Thank you.
And at this point, I would love to turn it over to Dr. Elizabeth Hallett to give you an update of our remote learning initiative. And so, Dr. Hallett.
Thank you. Since our last school committee meeting on April 7th, a lot has happened in the world of remote learning. At our last meeting, we had just recently released our remote learning plans for staff and also for parents and family. We had also set some clear expectations with regard to time on learning for students, and we had begun investigating the research behind best practices in the remote learning environment. Since then, we have moved children from optional and supplemental learning to required learning with the extension of Governor Baker's stay-at-home orders until May 4th. We continued at that time to move forward with our students, doing what we do best as educators by connecting with students and families, keeping learning going through a wide variety of engaging activities, creating opportunities for choice for kids and families, really whatever worked for them to be able to access remote learning. Of course, some of this hinged on the hope that we would be opening our doors in some capacity on May 4th. Then the governor's April 21st announcement to close schools for the remainder of the school year came. And although we imagined that it could happen, it was still tough for all of us. It was something that we, as teachers, principals, TAs, administrators, felt tough, felt really torn about it. We had to allow ourselves a little bit of time to be sad, to miss our students and our colleagues, even a little more than we were at the time, and to kind of mourn the loss of some of that closure that comes with those important rites of passage, moving from 5th to 6th grade. Things like graduation from high school, clearly, moving on to college and career, and for some of our staff, retirement. So what we have known all along, though, is that together we would find ways to really get through this as a district, and with a collective determination from everyone involved, we would continue to educate our children of Nantucket as best we can until the end of the school year. So guiding the work throughout the closure has been a remote learning task force, which you've heard me talk about on other occasions. I wanted to touch briefly on the different committees that have evolved through the task force and what they've been able to accomplish so far. And it's quite a bit, considering that we are constantly learning and updating and moving ourselves forward. One of our committees is called the Expectations Committee. This group is mainly principals, and it focuses on how each school will streamline their efforts to create detailed remote learning plans, schedules that incorporate content area standards, skills and activities to help facilitate this shift in a more self-directed or parent-assisted learning style, and creative ways to deliver content. A lot of this committee's work has been guided by the research and professional learning resources about remote learning, which leads us to the next committee, which is the PD and Resources Committee. This committee, the PD and Resources Committee, has been working behind the scenes to scan through and curate the most appropriate professional resources, articles, webinars, podcasts, and other learning opportunities for teachers, for counselors, specialists, administrators, pretty much the whole gamut. They often combine with the Expectations Committee and help us to refine areas that need particular attention, such as how to differentiate or create a variety of educational tasks based on what children and families have to work with from home. Each week they push out a message that is shared with each school and all of the teachers in each school with a professional development focus for the week. And they have created a Padlet, which you may have heard of before, which holds kind of a library of professional development opportunities that educators can choose from. We have a communications committee, and this group is made up of the folks such as our front office staff, our website managers, bilingual support personnel, and other essential people who really are critical to crafting, refining, and pushing out district program and school communications with parents, families, and the community. They've been really instrumental in making sure that certain communications and policies, such as acceptable use for technology and other important communications, are getting out to everyone. And there's a certain amount of speed in which things need to happen. When it comes to remote learning, we're finding that we are often feeling like we're on a treadmill running very fast. So thank you to the Communications Committee. They've done a remarkable job at pushing out important information. And finally, the Technology Committee, which has been essential in making sure that students, teachers, and staff have the hardware, the software, the internet connectivity, tech training, support that they need for online portions of remote learning. This group has spearheaded the work on learning how to connect with students through Google Meet and Zoom. They've shared tips and strategies. They've shared professional development opportunities. They've dealt with issues of netiquette for students and for parents when they're connecting to class meetings. And they've reached out to Nantucket Community Television as well to find newer ways to collaborate with educational programming. So that kind of gives you an idea of what is going on behind the scenes with regard to our remote learning educational model. What I want to share with you next is how remote learning is going in our schools and how teachers and TAs and administrators, counselors, social workers, specialists have really from the very beginning rolled up their sleeves and really gotten to work in connecting with students, reaching out to families and parents and each other to make this happen. Teachers at the elementary and intermediate schools, I should preface this, if my colleagues who are principals and assistant principals and Mr. Kozart would like to jump in or add anything that I might have missed in this report at the end, I'm sure there's plenty that I'm missing, but it's a hefty one. So I'm doing my best to make sure that I'm keeping as much in as possible. Teachers at the elementary and intermediate schools have been collaborating and co-planning with their grade level teams to kind of divide and conquer by content area. They have set up specific schedules for full class meeting times, as well as small group support instruction times for students to attend. They have also created a wealth of lessons, activities, fun and creative projects and assignments alongside their art, music, library, wellness teachers at each school. And so that students can kind of access and work on those projects as well independently. At middle and high school, teachers and students are following a rotating schedule, different at each school. Students are meeting face-to-face with a homeroom or advisory teacher and their peers, where they would go over assignments, do a weekly check-in, talk about connectivity, tech support, any other kind of support, even just a friendly, hey, how are things going, to make sure that they're feeling comfortable with the way remote learning is going. And then they have approximately 2 blocks of time per week set aside for each class or content area that they have to access full class meetings or one-to-one support, or to use that time to actually work on or dig into the independent learning that is expected each week. The weekly assignment choices for middle school are shared on the Nantucket Public Schools website and posted in the Google Classrooms that each teacher has set up, or on a Padlet if they are Encore teachers. And for high school, teachers are posting their weekly assignments in each of their Google Classrooms and providing feedback to students through that platform as well. Special educators and ESL teachers are in lockstep with their mainstream teacher colleagues. They are providing engaging learning activities that are appropriate to the students that they serve. They're offering regular support, all the while following the federal and state regulations regarding compensatory services for these students. Our guidance counselors, our social workers, behavior specialists, and teaching assistants are supporting the students that they normally work with, but also those that they don't. Excuse me. Sorry. This is happening either through lessons and activities, through support blocks, one-on-one appointments and check-ins, and a lot of other things that they are doing regularly to encourage engagement and connection. Teachers have been excellent at sharing the names of students who they're concerned about and who haven't engaged regularly or even at all in remote learning. And so it's truly a team effort to keep all of this going, and it's been amazing. Overall, student engagement in everyday learning at each school and grade level has been excellent, with high percentages of students participating in some way, whether it's accessing assignments, attending meetings, checking in with their teachers, attempting or completing assignments. All of this is all part of engaging. In comparison with student engagement in other districts around the state, Nantucket is hitting it out of the ballpark. Mr. Kozer and I have been in meetings with Cape and Island superintendents. I've been in meetings with the Cape and Island curriculum and assessment directors. And Nantucket is really doing an excellent job at keeping our kids engaged. We've had good attendance and participation, and there's still always room for improvement. So as challenging and a very steep learning curve as remote learning has been, there are some great silver linings or benefits to remote learning. And of course, there are also challenges. So I'd like to address each of those. But to start, the silver linings. One of the biggest positives that keeps coming up to the top is that we continue to receive new remote learning guidance from the Commissioner and from the Department of Education, and Nantucket has consistently been ahead of the curve with some of this guidance. Each time we read through and process these new guidance documents, or if Mr. Kozer and I speak with our colleagues from other districts, we are always finding that we're in a really good place with our remote learning model. For example, the most recent guidance that's been issued by the Commissioner brings up 2 really important points. One is the need to keep students consistently engaged in remote learning. And you've heard that we are doing that to the best of our ability. And 2, to make sure the essential standards for each grade and content area are being taught. From what I shared with you earlier, number 1, we are doing very well. And with number 2, the standards, over the past 10 days or so since the document was released, principals and teachers have been working really hard in grade levels and professional learning teams to be able to go through each of these power standards that they have released. They've released this group of essential standards, and we are determining that we have reached quite a bit of these standards and we are at proficiency in many cases. So this is great. Really, really good news to us. People are feeling quite good that they've already taught the majority of the standards up until March. And then, of course, we will continue to address those that need more focus or need to be approached or addressed going farther down. Another silver lining is the amazing good faith effort made by all educators to collaborate, collectively learn, put heads together to identify best practices and support each other and each other's learning through coming together as this educational community and make this model work. Countless times we have heard from principals and teachers alike that this is happening. We've seen the opportunities for building newer professional learning communities at the high school, for example, and I think we're all seeing the value of this collective collaboration, and it's been exciting to see the district move in this direction. We're also seeing that some of our students are thriving in this remote learning environment. We see students who might have had behavioral issues or struggled with a traditional learning style in a regular classroom, and they are participating and completing work and doing well, and that's an exciting piece. The other is also happening, so we have to consider that some students who have thrived in a traditional classroom setting may struggle with the lack of connection that they have had over the last few weeks. And again, those are things that we are working on regularly to hope that we can provide some equity and access across the district. Another silver lining, teacher creativity and fun. And I'm hoping that you have seen some of those fantastic activities that people have put out. One that comes to mind is the digraph detective. So a shout out to the elementary school for the teacher who created that. And that was just one that came to my mind right now. But there are so many other really interesting and out of the box activities that tie right into standards, but teachers are finding ways to do new and different kind of innovative projects with their students. So that's a great little silver lining. So although it feels good to know that we are moving kids forward educationally, it doesn't mean that there aren't challenges and areas that we need to work on. I promise I'll be quick. One of the most important challenges that we need to continue to face is the issue of equity and access for all students in the remote learning environment. We have made great strides to kind of close that gap with students, trying to get those electronic devices in the hands of anybody who needs them, acquiring MiFi hotspot devices that can increase connectivity to internet for some of the families who have struggled. We know that every situation is different for every child, and that we may not know how challenging accessing remote learning is for certain students. Home life comes into play, responsibilities of taking care of siblings, a parent or both parents that have returned to work or happen to be frontline workers. Many different things come into play, and we don't know all of the challenges that our students are facing. So we're trying to get physical supplies, materials, support, anything we can do to consider this equity and access. I have to do a shout out to Ms. Kelly Cooney, who has put together, and her bilingual staff, who have put together weekly bilingual support Zoom meetings for EL families. Counselors and social workers and other educators are always trying to determine what is keeping children from having that limited access to remote learning. So, we need to learn what we can do to best serve our more marginalized or vulnerable students in this situation. And so we're making this a priority in our professional development this week, and our focus is really on equity and access. And the other really more challenging area that we need to focus on is how we assess student learning, how we provide feedback to students and parents, and also how we consider grading. This is probably on everybody's mind. This is a very different environment. The way we have traditionally done our grading can't work in a remote learning environment. The state guidance continues to reiterate that it's really important to focus on feedback, formative assessment, and keeping in mind that equity and access piece that I just spoke of earlier. We don't know we do know that we will not be following that traditional grading practice, but we will be considering different ways of showing student engagement, participation, and reporting progress in a credit, no credit model. For that reason, that's our main focus for this week in our task force committee. And we will be putting a protocol for assessment, feedback, and grading together as we go forward. And we're planning to add an addendum document to our remote learning plan for staff and also for parents and families. We're still waiting patiently for more guidance from the state about high school grading practices. They are promising that this is coming out very soon. It is challenging to know what the expectations are, but I know that the high school teachers, Ms. Saradellis and Dr. Bucky, have really done a lot of work to move high school educators away from that typical grading mindset to something a little bit more formative with regard to assessment of student learning. And as I finish, I can't stress how proud I am to be part of this learning community. Every day I hear about people who have stepped up and made this new remote learning model work to the best that they could. I continue to be amazed by the stories, the things I see, the sheer dedication that this school community has put forth with this model. So, and that's all. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Great. Thank you very much. Tim, any questions or comments?
Yes. I wonder, Beth, have you started thinking about the fall? Because I don't know that the situation may change tremendously. I appreciate the fact that you brought up that parents are probably going to have to go back to work, and that will be another problem. But I certainly see spending the summer anticipating continuing problems in the fall.
Absolutely. That's going to be a major focus for the remainder of this year, for the summer. And clearly, we have to have plan A, plan B, plan C in place and ready to go. It's going, again, we're going to wait for guidance from the state. May 18th feels like it's just around the corner, and it'll be interesting to see what the governor determines with regard to the stay-at-home order. It is challenging to open up the economy when you don't open up the schools. So that is something that we have to consider, and we've got to think carefully about how we are protecting our children, but also how we are supporting the move towards the reopening. And while we know that's not going to happen for the remainder of this year, we need to be ready. So it's going to be a major focus for the remainder of this year and the summer.
Thank you.
Thank you. Zona, any questions or comments?
Just a comment, again, taking this opportunity to thank each and every one of you. You know, we couldn't imagine ourselves here at all in our lifetime, you know. And I think the way we're just trying to work through it and staying in touch with each other and students, it's so important because you see the lives being lost and things like that, and it worries and concerns me because we have a double whammy being isolated out here on our own. So that's important. So I just want to stress to everybody, if you see somebody, say something, say a kind word, be kind to each other, and we will get through this. God is watching, and he's trying to get a message to us, and we just have to listen for it. Thank you.
Thank you. Steve, questions, comments?
Ooh, you caught me by surprise. Beth, you'll be happy to hear that you've already answered many, if not most, of my questions. The state standards that you referenced, I know the commissioner talked about prerequisite standards and content areas, etc. Does that mean that we're trying to get beyond the knowledge and information that the kids had in the middle of March?
That's a good question. So yes, we are trying to look carefully at what the commissioner and his team and the Department of Education, Curriculum and Assessment has deemed the essential standards for each grade level and each content area. So they have basically looked at the entire curriculum framework for each of those grades and each of those content levels and have reduced it into what those core or power standards are, what every child should know in order to move on to the next grade. The great thing, like I said in my report, is that we have realized that we've hit a lot of those proficiency levels of these standards already. And part of that is because of the nature of our schedule. if you think about it, MCAS testing takes up a lot of time in the spring, from March to April to May. And when MCAS is happening, not as much instruction is going on. So there's a lot of instruction that is really important and goes on up until March, and things slow down a little bit during the MCAS season, and then we reach the end of the year. So the good news is that what we're seeing in looking and basically going standard by standard in a checklist format is that we're doing pretty well, and we have reached as many of those standards as we can so far. And for those that we haven't, or those content areas or pieces that we're still needing to address, teachers are putting that right into their current learning plans and preparing as part of their instruction going forward for the remainder of the year.
If I promise to little or no follow-up, can you send us a copy of the standards that the state has sent? I don't recall receiving them, and trying to find things on their website is making me crazier than normal. I'd just be curious to see what they've distilled the core elements down to.
Sure, I can do that.
Thank you. And
You're
this
welcome.
this could be for both you and Mike. Well, first of all, let me say I'm glad that there's focus on equity and access. Participation has been and is going to continue to be so important. I was delighted to see in Dr. Bucky's Monday message that they've put in place essentially a participation grade. They don't want to call it a grade. Are you looking at using that at the other levels as well?
Sorry, I just missed that last piece. Could you please repeat your question?
Yeah, Dr. Bucky, in his Monday message, indicated that the high school has implemented essentially a rating system for participation. I wish I could make the computer bring that up for me, but every time I try, it blocks you people out. I mean, it was participating, partially participating, never participating. Are you looking at putting something like that into effect at the other schools before the end of the year?
Yes, we are looking at each school and how they can provide that feedback to both parents and families, but also to students. We want to make sure that that there are reasons and that it is clear that we have done our due diligence. Our due diligence in understanding why a child might not be participating, or why that child might not have been accessing assignments or able to do things. So we have to be particularly careful, again, under that piece about equity and access. Every student is having their own situations at home, and we don't want anything to come through negatively that students aren't trying. It may be that they would love to try, but they are unable to. So that's our job, and that's where we need to dig deeper into the equity and access piece. But in order to provide feedback to parents and say your child is on point, is at grade level, yes, we will have certain feedback protocols that we're putting in place, and that's the work that we're doing this week with the expectations committee and eventually the communications committee, which will it'll be part of the remote learning plan and as an addendum.
So that may already answer my next question, and what I think is my last question, which is: are you looking at trying to have some sort of formative assessments in place by the end of the year?
So formative assessments are occurring at all times. Summative assessments we cannot put into place. We just cannot assure that every single child is able to show a full progress and full meeting of that standard or those standards. It's just part of remote learning. And so all of us across the state are in the same boat. We are not able to use summative assessments to identify how students are moving forward. But our formative assessments, which are occurring daily, weekly, can tell us pretty much the same as what our summative assessments can tell us, as long as we are consistent and that we are regular in providing that feedback and watching that student grow and achieve through the remote learning platform. So it's a challenge. This is a real challenge. It's something that, we've never really it's changing our thoughts and philosophy in many ways, and we've got to kind of keep developing that and understanding what's best for kids.
Yeah, thank you for correcting my usage of formative and summative, but maybe summatives will be next year. We'll have to see how that goes. But thank you. It sounds like you're staying on top of things, and I can't imagine how you do it.
A lot of work.
Thank you. Pauline, questions or comments?
I think a lot of areas have been covered that I wanted to bring up, but Beth, it's interesting what you just say about the summative assessments, because my concern is, and I know it's very challenging for the online learning, and I know our teachers are doing a tremendous job, but it will never replace the in-classroom experience. And so for our non-traditional learners, particularly, you're not going to necessarily pick up what you would in a classroom. And so I'm glad to know that there are regular check-ins with teachers and team leaders and identifying students. But I think that sort of comes down to what you've just said, that we don't always know what children are able to retain and how much, or even if they're having a struggle during the class, because looking at a screen with 20 students like this is a lot different than being in a classroom where you could give one-on-one care. So just something, and I think, as we're going through this, it would be helpful to get feedback from families and students as to what's working and what isn't, so that if we are in a position where we have to go to some sort of similar setup for the fall, that we will have the summer to reevaluate how everything's been doing. But thank you, and thank you to everybody that's been working so hard and tirelessly on this.
Thank you. I would just love to comment that I think now is more important than ever that we're building these relationships with our families, so we can understand now, as the parents have taken on the role as somewhat of the remote teacher, and having that responsibility of overseeing and making sure their student is there and working. I think just that collaboration between school and family is so important right now. So I appreciate that you guys are really working on that. I do have a question. Are school councils meeting?
That I will let principals address that.
Okay, thank you.
We have had a school council meeting during closure. We are working with FOMPS on elections for school councils for next year, but the high school council has not met.
Okay, thank you.
It's the same for the elementary school. We've been in touch, but largely our work that we were going to do in the last 2 months and going forward has been postponed because of our current settings. So we're in the same position as Dr. Bucky shared.
Thank you.
Hi, it's the same situation for NIS.
Okay, thank you. And I see that.
Same I think Julie's here, but in case she's not connecting, same for CPS. We've been in contact with FOBS for running elections for next year, and I look forward to having a school council meeting as soon as I can in July.
Thank you. And I just think I also want to bring to attention something Julie mentioned, is that you guys have been doing parent coffees, which have been, I think, that's a great way to connect with families. And I hope that continues to help parents feel like they are connected and families know how to reach somebody, if they do have concerns, questions. So I appreciate the copies continuing. And then I will just echo the concern of the nicer weather coming, sunny days, and lots of people wanting to be outside enjoying this weather, not to mention those, older students who might feel the need to get to work. So it does concern me about our place with, continuing to educate to our fullest capacity under these conditions. So, but I know that's something in the back of everyone's minds.
Madam Chair, Zona Butler, I have a quick question, and it's pretty simple. Can you all, and this is to admin, principals, whomever, can you assure us that every student has been contacted, parent or student, that every family has either chimed in the class, has been in contact, that we have not left a stone unturned? That's my concern. I don't want someone to get lost in the shuffle. So can you assure us that that has happened?
Through the chair, I can confirm that for the high school. There has not been a student or a family. Now, their levels of engagement vary dramatically, but for the high school, all students and families have been contacted.
Thank you.
I concur with John. I feel like we do not have a student that we have not contacted or a family we have not contacted. So I believe that every student that might have been missing for these days or this day, we have contacted at CPS.
Thank you.
Hi. We have been extremely diligent, as everyone else has, in trying to find any students who didn't engage initially and figure out the reasons why. And we still work tremendously hard to make sure that anyone who seems to be dropping off or falling through the cracks is immediately followed up with and contacted parents, students through all kinds of means.
Thank you.
At the elementary school, we are, much like the other schools, I'm sure, taking attendance in all of our various sessions, in our small group sessions, in our whole group sessions, in meetings with reading teachers, L teachers, and so on. Every Friday, our structure is this. Every Friday, teachers report that attendance to the counselors, and the counselors start the following week with the follow-up. I would say that Jocelyn Ramirez has been very helpful, along with our two counselors, in doing that follow-up work so that it is done weekly. In addition to, so there is not one child we have missed, and we communicate weekly with some families as needed.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank
Madam
you very
Chair,
much. Yes.
if I may, I just want to thank Zona for the question, because the answers are going to be more and more important as time goes by. We've got to get everyone involved. And also, for anyone who's not watching the chat, Julie reported that CPS did have a school council meeting at their parent coffee, and everybody showed up. So one of the schools did it. Thank you, Julie.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your report and your update. We appreciate that. I'm moving on to subcommittee or work group. Raise your hand if you want to report on any subcommittee or work group. Okay, well, moving on, we have our school council representative, Joel McVicker, who I don't see here tonight. No, okay. All right, thank you. And then our agenda for the next meeting, June 2nd, 2020. Mike, do you want to speak to that?
Sure. We have, as you can see on the our agenda for tonight's meeting, we have the annual athletics update. Although you've been getting some wonderful reports from Chris Morey and Travis Lombardi, I think they've kept everybody abreast of what's happening and have done some amazing shout outs and recognitions of various students and teams. We'll also have our annual technology report. We'll have Jen Erickson provide that for us, as well as the special education annual report. We will not have the Student Opportunity Act plan on that next agenda because that has been, I won't say tabled by the commissioner, but he is not looking for those plans to be submitted in the midst of everything else that we're trying to do. So when it's appropriate, we will do that. I believe that you can probably just have the one June meeting and anything else can go to July. However, you may wish to have a second June meeting if we can complete negotiations with the teachers unit of the NTA. I'd love to say that we'll have that for you on June 2nd. I'll know more on Thursday.
Great. Thank you very much.
Madam Chair, if I may, we may want to keep our thinking flexible as far as budgeting is concerned as well. We still don't know, as far as I know anyway, whether the town's going to be coming to us for any adjustments to our budget. And if they do, that might require that we meet as well.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Pauline?
Yes, not to do with the agenda, but just a comment, if that's okay, Madam Chair. I just wanted to take the moment to thank Channel 18. They had the opportunity to watch live the Nantucket Golf Club Scholars Award last week, and the presentation that they helped with was phenomenal. It was professional, and I think everybody was highlighted perfectly, from the pre-recorded section to maneuvering the screen. I don't know how they did it, but they have been really working hard these last several weeks, and I just wanted to recognize them. I also want to recognize our golf club scholars. Of course, our own Joel McVicker is in the top 10, but to all of the students that made the application, it's wonderful that we had so many students put in their application. And of course, congratulations to Brianna Lavelle and Phaedra Plank. Thank you to the Golf Club Scholar Committee, because I know that they work a lot of hours and it's not an easy job. I would not have wanted that task at all. So, but thank you to them. That's it. Thank you.
Madam Chair, if I may, thank you for stealing my shout out, Pauline. But I will say that that really was delightful to watch the golf club presentation. You really got the feeling for those students and what they've done. Mega thanks, obviously, to the golf club, but seeing those students and their families together like that shows what you can do with the technology. I don't know what we're going to do about graduation. Wouldn't it be nice to have a camera in every senior's house, huh? We'll leave that for another day. Thank you.
Thank you, Pauline. Do you have one more?
Yeah, I'm sorry, yes, and even though Steve was willing to let that go, I did just want to put out there, and I know that there's a lot of conversations going on, but this is going to be our last meeting most likely before graduation, or I'm just wondering if you could provide any kind of update. I know it won't be our last meeting actually, but I know that there's a lot of conversations with families and with students, so I just wondered if we could just have some sort of announcement at this meeting or update.
Dr. Bucky?
Sure. Happy to report out. I have been meeting with the senior class officers and the senior class advisor every Friday afternoon. We have determined to keep graduation on the scheduled date. What that will be is still a conversation. The officers have decided to expand their outreach to employ or enlist other members of the class that touch different segments, so athletics and music and vocational and National Honor Society, student council, so that the decision isn't just put to 4 students and the advisor. We're talking with town about what might be possible. We're looking at other schools, what they're doing. We are waiting until May 18th to see what the governor will say. If there are some loosening of restrictions, that will impact the decision. We have tried to get out in the Monday message and with emails to seniors and their parents that there's a lot of behind the scenes work going on. Senior class yard signs came in today. So starting tomorrow, seniors can pick up a free yard sign to put at their home. And there are a lot of good things happening, and I know people are desperate for the decision, but I really do think we are well served waiting to see what the governor says on the 18th, and then having a more representative or a larger representative body of the senior class make that decision. I take great solace in whatever is decided. This community will rally behind the class and make it happen and make it special. So I just implore your patience that once the decision is made, it will be worthy of the class of 2020. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, John.
Very much. Okay, well, before we adjourn, in light of Teacher and Staff Appreciation Week, I would like to share a letter on behalf of the school committee. Greetings to all Nantucket Public School staff. Wow, there is no way we could have imagined ourselves in this situation in a million years. Life deals us surprises all the time, and how we choose to address those surprises and demands says a lot about the kind of human race we are. Thank you to each and every one of you. Administrators, department heads, teachers, teaching assistants, ESPs, and custodians. You have had to alter your way of thinking about and planning how you teach and reach out to our students, and you have shown real character and represented the human spirit in quite some remarkable ways. We appreciate you. Please know that we are here and supporting all of you. Words are not enough to tell you how grateful we are to you for keeping on the path to success, despite the obstacles we have had to face these past several weeks. We would like to take a moment to specifically thank Mrs. Peterson, representing our food services, along with Island Kitchen Restaurant Patrick Ridge, for making sure our free and reduced lunch students and families continue to be fed during these uncertain times. We would also like to thank all the teachers and teaching assistants who are not only remotely teaching, but reaching out to check in on our students, especially our seniors, who we realize find themselves in quite the situation of living out their senior year with such limitations. Our hearts go out to them. We know there are many wonderful things going on throughout the community, showing how helpful, generous, and assistive we are all being towards one another. So keep on keeping on. Thank you to everyone, and please continue to hang in there. Practice social distancing, wash your hands regularly, and please do not forget to wear masks and gloves appropriately when you go out. God continues to give us strength every day to come out on the other side of this pandemic as better individuals and as better people on our quiet little island. Thank you again, and take care on behalf of the Nantucket Public School Committee. So thank you very much to all of our teachers and staff that are making this possible. And on that note, may I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Second, Pauline Approach.
All in favor? Thank you.
Aye.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night. Thank you.
Good night.
Good night, John Boy.